Hi all, welcome to Vab Fashion's YouTube channel. My name is Eunice. In this video, we'll be learning how to make this beautiful bustier gown with basque waistline and side drape. So before we get started, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, kindly click on the subscribe button to subscribe and make sure to put on your notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. And please bear in mind that subscription is free. Subscription is your way of supporting my channel. So please support my channel by subscribing. And also feel free to share this video with your friends and do not hesitate to like also. So let's get right into the video. So these are the materials we're going to be using for this project. Here is the lace fabric. We'll be using this lace fabric for the down part, that's which is the skirt part and the yoke. And this is the satin. The doll face satin we'll be using to line the lace. And then this is the second lining. The second lining we'll be using to line the lace. When you're using lace, you need to double line it. Here I also have a velvet fabric we'll be using. The velvet will be for the sleeves and the upper bodies, which is the bustier part, and also the drape. And then here I have haystay. This haystay, I'll be using it to laminate. I'll be ironing it to the velvet. This is to give stability to the velvet. Very important because velvet stretches both ways. And then here I have my wadding, which is also known as breast pad. I'll be using it to pad the bustier area. Then I also have this silver applique I'll be using to decorate the upper part. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start drafting. I'll be drafting directly on my lining. So I'll fold over my fabric and show us the next thing to do. So we're going to start with drafting the upper bodies. And to determine the amount of fabric to fold to draft the upper bodies, you're going to divide the biggest circumference by 4 plus 4 inches. And here the biggest circumference of the upper bodies is the bust. The bust divided by 4, I added 4 inches to that measurement, and that is what I folded here. This extra 4 inches is for my darts intake. So the next thing I'm going ahead to do is to draw the shoulder line. And from the shoulder line, I'm going to mark the chest line. To get the chest line, divide the bust circumference by 6 plus 2.5, and that will give you the chest line. So I'm going to mark the chest line. Next, I'm going ahead to mark the bust point. The bust point from shoulder to bust point is 10.5. I'm going to mark at that point. From shoulder to under bust is 13.5, and I'm marking at that point. From shoulder to half length is 17 inches, so plus half inch for joining the down pattern, so I marked on 17.5. So I'm going ahead to straighten my lines. So now the next thing I'm going to do on the shoulder line, I'm going to mark half of the shoulder measurement, which is the shoulder divided by 2 plus half inch, and that gave me 8.5. Having marked 8.5 at this point, I'll come down by 1 inch to get the shoulder slant. And then on the shoulder line here, I'm going to mark a neck width of 3 inches. I'll bring in my ruler and connect this 1 inch to the neck width I have here. So now we have our shoulder slant. So on the chest line, I'm going to enter the shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus half inch, and that's 8.5. So I'm going to connect that point to the shoulder line. So right now you can see that we now have our armhole line. So I'll get the midpoint of this armhole line here. I'll mark the midpoint and go in by 3/4 of an inch. So after marking my 3/4 inch here, I'm going to use my straight ruler to connect it to the shoulder tip, just like you can see me doing. So to curve the armhole now to meet the chest line, I'm going to mark the bust measurement here on the chest line. The bust divided by 4, that's what I marked there. So I'll go ahead and curve the armhole. So now you can see that we now have our front armhole. So the next thing I'm going to do is to enter the nipple to nipple measurement, half of the nipple to nipple measurement. So the nipple to nipple I'm working with is 8 inches, half of it is 4. 4 plus half inch, that will give me 4.5. That's extra half inch is for sewing the center to the sides. So I marked on 4.5 inches. Then I'm connecting the points like this. So the next thing I'm going to do is to do my dart intake. So on the underbust line, I'm going to mark 1 inch on the center side and then 1 inch on the side. I'll repeat the same thing on the waistline. So I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides of this line. So having marked 1 inch on both sides of the line, I'm just going to use my straight ruler to connect it like this. And then I'll bring in my armhole curve to connect it to the bust point. So just watch carefully the way I'm placing my armhole curve. Just going to come down by half of an inch from the bust point. Okay, and then I'll place my curve like this and then connect it. Can you see? I'll repeat the same thing on the other side. I'll connect it as well. So now you can see we have done our dart intake at the under part. So the next thing I want to do is to tighten the overbust. To get the overbust line, I'm going to measure the distance I have from the bust point to the underbust point, and that will tell us the distance to the overbust. You can add half inch to that measurement, and here I got 3 inches from the bust point to the underbust. I got 3 inches. I added half inch to that measurement, and I went up from the bust point line upwards by 3.5. And this line now I drew is the overbust line. And can you see, placing my tape from the shoulder to that point, I have 7 inches. Okay. So here on the overbust line, I'm going to mark the nipple to nipple measurement plus half inch. That's half of the nipple to nipple measurement plus half inch. So you can see me connecting it with a straight line like this. So we need to do our tightening also on the overbust line. At the center part, I'm going to mark half inch, and then at the side, I will mark half inch as well. So that's a total of 1 inch. Okay. So the underbust part, we took 1 inch on both sides, and the overbust part, we're taking half inch on both sides. So I'm using my curved ruler to connect it like this so you can see that we now have our overbust tightened. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to enter all our horizontal measurements. So the bust divided by 4, I marked it, and then I added my 2 inches for sewing allowance, and then I also need 1 inch for turning my lining and half inch for joining the side piece. So that's a total of 3 inches I added here. I want to be left with 2 inches when I'm done stitching my pieces together. At the underbust point, I marked the underbust measurement and I replaced the dart I took at the center, and then I'll also add the same 3 inches here. So here on the waist measurement, I'm also going to enter quarter of the waist measurement. I'll replace the 2 inches that I have there, and then I'll add the 3 inches. I'm marking 3 inches. 2 inches is my original sewing allowance. 1 inch is for half inch is for turning my lining, half inch is for joining the side. So that's a total of 1 inch. Okay, I'll repeat the same thing here on the chest line too. So here on the overbust line, you can see that we also have a dart intake of half inch on both sides, which gives us a total of 1 inch. I'll be replacing that 1 inch on the overbust line here. If you don't replace these, you're going to have a shortage. Take note that I'm drafting on my fabric. So you can see on the overbust line, I'm marking that 1 inch dart that I've taken there. And now we also need half inch to sew them together. We're going to sew with half inch on both sides. So that will also give us a shortage of 1 inch. We're going to have a yoke at the upper part of this bustier. So if you don't replace all this, your yoke will be wider than the bustier, which is going to be a problem. So it will make the overbust part really, really tight. So right now I'm marking 1 inch extra. 1 inch is for our dart replacement, and then 1 inch is for stitching on both sides with half inch. Can you see? So you can see that the armhole has shifted at the overbust area. So you can see how I'm connecting it to the chest line. So then the upper part, which is the yoke, is still maintaining the original armhole, while the overbust part, you can see that the armhole came out there because of our dart replacement. If you don't replace this, you're going to have a problem. This is because I'm drafting directly on my fabric. If you were drafting on a pattern, you add all the allowances to your fabric when transferring to fabric. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is to create our yoke. From the overbust line, I'm coming down by 1 inch, and then I'm going to place my armhole curve like this and just curve it just on the overbust line. This is how deep or how low I want the yoke to be. Can you see? So the whole of this upper part is going to serve as our yoke. I just came down by 1 inch from the overbust line and I curved it to give it that sweetheart neckline. So this part that is up is our yoke. So the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the neck width. I'm marking a neck width of 3 inches like I earlier did, and then I'm coming down by the same 3 inches. I'll use my armhole curve to connect it like this. So now we have a round neckline. So this is it for the upper bodies and our dart intake. The next thing I'm going to do now is to mark the side dart, which is the difference between the front and back half length. Here, the front half length of my client is 17 inches. I added half inch to it for joining the down part, so that gave me 17.5. While the back half length is 15.5 inches. So already I mentioned that the front length is 17 inches and the back half length is 15.5, which is a difference of 1.5 inches. So that's going to be our bust dart or our side dart. So here at the waistline from the side, I marked 1.5 upwards, and then you can see I connected it to the first dart leg, which is the side piece. So this is our side dart, which is the difference between the front and back. So the next thing I'm going to do is to extend the front length because we want to have a basque waistline. Remember at the beginning of this video, I told us that this is a basque waist gown. So from this front length, I'm coming down by 3 inches. So this is now going to make the front length 20 inches for us to have the basque waistline. And then you can see me extending the waist dart all the way down to that 3 inches. And then I'm going ahead to rule a straight line at this point. So this line is for us to achieve our basque waistline. So before we connect the basque waistline or cut the basque waistline, I'm going to go ahead and cut out my pieces so that we can place the center piece and the side piece together to cut the basque waistline perfectly. That's to place them together so that we can, by that time we would have closed our darts. I hope you understand that. So this is me going ahead to cut out the yoke. This part is the yoke. I'm cutting the sweetheart neckline. So I'll keep this aside. Then I'll go ahead and cut out the darts running from the overbust down to the waistline like this. You see? So these are centerpiece. I'm going to cut out the other side as well. I'm just doing this so that we can see clearly what I'm doing. I'm cutting out this side as well. So you can see that we have removed the overbust dart and the waist dart. So this is what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the sides also like this. So I'm not cutting on the dart that's on the side that I have until I have closed the centerpiece, or I've placed the centerpiece and the side piece together to create the basque waistline. Then we'll cut them all out together. So you can see this is what our front pattern looks like. I'm going to place them side by side. Can you see? Want to make sure that you place them together closed like this to create the basque waistline. So from this side that I have here, I'm going to connect it now to the 3 inches length I have. So you can decide to use the straight part of your ruler or the curved part of your ruler. For me, you can see I'm using the curved part. I don't want this basque to be too sharp. So you can see how I'm connecting it. So here now we have our basque waistline. So I'm going to go ahead now and cut it out. You want to make sure that this is placed together so that it aligns. If you don't place them together, the side is going to be shorter than the center. You don't want to have that problem. So make sure that you place them together like I have done. and you will achieve a good result. Can you see what we have? You can see how curved the center is. So that's that for this part. So I'm going to go ahead and fold my fabric for the back. The back is just going to be a normal basic bodice. So this is really simple. You can see I have marked my zip allowance already. My zip allowance is 1.5, and then I have the shoulder line, and then you can see I have the back half length, which I said is 15.5 inches plus half inch for joining the down part, so I have a total of 16 inches there. So placing my tape away from the zip allowance, I'm marking half of the shoulder measurement plus half inch for joining the sleeve. Next, I'm going to mark the chest line. Placing my tape from the shoulder line, I'm marking the chest line, which is the bust divided by 6 plus 2.5. You have your chest line, and then where the length stops is where the waistline is, which is the half length. So you can see the back is really simple. All we need is our chest line and our waistline. So here on the chest line, I went ahead to mark half of the shoulder measurement plus half inch for joining our sleeve. So you can see I connected it to the shoulder line here. So to achieve the shoulder slant, I'm coming down by 1 inch, and then I'm going to mark a neck width of same 3 inches like I did for the front, and then I'll connect it here. So you can see I've taken out our shoulder slant. So what we have left of our our armhole measurement, I beg your pardon, is 7.5 inches, which is the actual armhole measurement. And then I went in by half inch to create the armhole curve, and I'm connecting it to the shoulder tip. So on the chest line, I'm going to mark quarter of the bust measurement, and then I'll curve the armhole to meet that point. Okay, so this is it. And then here, the next thing I'm going to do is to add my sewing allowance of 2 inches here. So I'm adding 2 inches. The front I added 3 inches because I need to join the bustiers together. So that extra 1 inch is for joining the pieces together. So the back, I don't have several pieces, so there's no need doing that. So on the back waistline, on the back waistline, I entered quarter of the waist measurement plus 2 inches, and then plus 1 inch for my dart, and I connected it to the chest line. So like I said, the back is really simple. It's just our normal basic bodies. So if you don't know how to draft a basic bodies, I'm going to drop the link in the description box so that you can watch and learn how to draft a basic bodies. So here on the zipper allowance on the waistline, I went in by half inch to eliminate zipper bulge. And then you can see I connected it to the shoulder line. So the next thing I'm going to do is to come down by 5 inches. This is for the back neck depth, and then a width of the same 3.5 inches like I used for the front. So I'm curving it to meet this point. So here, so that's it for our back pattern. It is really simple, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out. So after cutting out our back piece, I went ahead to cut the velvet fabric, and I ironed my haystay to it, and I also laminated with my lining. This is to keep our velvet stable so that it doesn't stretch, okay, when we're sewing it. And I also went ahead to pad up the front pieces, that's the bustier. I padded it up. I have a detailed video on how to perfectly pad your bustier, and I'll be dropping the link in the description box. Sorry I didn't add it to this video because I don't want this video longer than necessary. You can see that the video is already long, so I didn't add it to this video. But I'll be dropping the link in the description box. You will watch and learn how to perfectly pad your bustier. So this is me cutting my yoke. I'm tracing out the neckline, and I've cut out the shoulder line. So now to this yoke, I'm going to be adding a seam allowance of 1 inch. This 1 inch is to replace the half inch we're going to lose when we join the yoke, and then also to replace the half inch we're going to lose on the bustier area. So I'm adding 1 inch to this measurement. I hope we get that. So to the length of this yoke, I'm adding 1 inch. So this is so that it replaces everything we're going to lose, because we're going to use half inch to join the yoke at the upper part, and we'll still use half inch on the bustier down, and we'll join them together. So that's why I'm adding 1 inch to this measurement. So this is what our yoke looks like. You see that I have my 1 inch at the down part, and this is what it looks like when it is open. So this is it. So now the next thing we are going to do is to cut the skirt part. So to cut the skirt part, I'm going ahead to fold my fabric into two. So to determine the amount of fabric to fold into two, you're going to use the biggest measurement you're working with on the down part, which is the hip. The hip divided by 4 plus 2 inches. That will give us the amount of fabric to fold. You want to always take note of the fabric you're folding so that you don't fold shortage or excess. So always use the biggest circumference to determine the amount of fabric to fold. So now this is it. I haven't folded my fabric. The next thing I'm going to do is to draw the starting line, which is the waistline. So having drawn the waistline, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the hip line. Take note that all my measurements will be starting from minus the half length. And remember that our half length for the front half length is 17 inches. So from that 17 inches, that's where all my measurements will start. But we need half inch to join the skirt waist to the bustier waist. So I'm going to be placing my tape from minus 16.5. That's because of the half inch we're going to use to join the upper part. I hope this is clear. So basically all my measurement is starting from minus the half length, which is 16.5. This is because we need half inch for joining it. So I'm not starting from exactly 17, which is the half length. I hope that is clear. So I went ahead to mark the hip line, the knee line, and then the full length of this gown. So this is because it's a gown I'm making. If it were to be a skirt, all you need to do is to mark your waistline, the hip line, the knee line, and then the full length of the skirt. So this is for a gown. That's why I'm placing my tape from minus the half length. So here on the waistline, I entered quarter of the waist measurement plus 2 inches. On the hip line, I repeated the same thing, quarter of the hip measurement plus 2 inches. So here now, on the hip line, whatever I have on the hip line determines what I'll be using on the knee line. So here, whatever I have on the hip line, I'm going to subtract 1.5 inches from it and enter it on the knee line. And I'll repeat the same thing on the full length of the skirt. So I subtracted 1.5 inches from what I have on the hip line and I marked it on the knee line. This is because I'm making a pencil gown. And I repeated the same thing on the full length of the skirt. So you can see me connecting my points. So this is what our skirt pattern looks like. You can see it is really simple. So at the center front here, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, which is going to be for the waist sloper. This is to eliminate any smile lines around the hip line. You don't want to have gatherings around the hip line. So I've come down by 1 inch from the center front, and you can see I connected it to the actual measurement, not to the side seam allowance. I hope we understand that. I connected it to the actual measurement, not to the allowance I added. So I'm going ahead to cut out the skirt. So you can see I'm cutting on the original waistline. I'm not cutting on the waist sloper yet until we have cut out our back. Then I'll show us how to take out the waist sloper, because we'll be placing the front piece on the back piece to draft the back piece. So that's why we're not cutting out our waist sloper yet. So you can see that our pencil skirt is really, really, really simple. So I'm going to fold my fabric so that we can draft the back as well. So I folded my fabric for the back piece and I placed the front piece over it. You can see that from the center back, I have a space of 1.5 inches, which is going to be for my zip allowance. So this is me extending the hip line, marking the hip line on the back piece, on the waist, and then the knee line, and as well as the full length. This is just me transferring marking so that we know where our points are. Okay. So here on the side of the back piece, I'm going to add 1 inch for that. Remember that the front piece, I didn't talk about that because I'm not adding that for the back. I'm not going to sew that for the front rather. So I added just 1 inch for my dart at the back, and you can see I connected it to the hip line. So here at the center back at the zip allowance area, I came in by 1/2 inch. This is to eliminate zipper bulge. Then here on the knee line, remember I have 1.5 inches here. I'm marking out 1 inch. I'm also going to repeat the same thing on the hem line. I marked out 1 inch as well. So I'm connecting this 1 inch from the hemline to the knee line. This is to create that bum illusion, to give the butt a butt rise. That's to give the bum a that fine shape at the back. You don't want this skirt to just be straight. We're not straight at the back. So you can see what it looks like. It looks like there's a hip there. It's giving a shape. So when you take out this 1 inch at the knee line and at the full length, it has a way of lifting the butt at the back. So the 1 inch I removed here at the center back, at the knee line and at the full length, and replacing it back on the side, still on the knee line and at the full length. You can see I returned back the 1 inch, and then I'm connecting to the hip line just like I did at the other side. So basically the 1 inch I removed at the center back, I replaced it at the side. So now we're going ahead to cut out our center back. This is the zipper bulge. I'm taking out the zipper bulge. And then this is the bum illusion. I'm cutting out that 1 inch I marked. So you can see what the center back looks like. It doesn't look straight. It looks like there's a hip there. This is to give us that nice shape at the back. You don't want to draft your skirt straight, just straight like that. The bum, your shape will not be, it will not bring out the nice shape at the back, okay? So take note that the 1 inch I removed at the center back, I replaced it at the side. If you don't replace it, you're going to have a shortage. So I've replaced it and I'm cutting out my skirt pattern. So this is it. So I'll come here and cut the waistline like this. So this is it for the back. So the back is really simple. So I'm going ahead to notch the zip allowance area to indicate that this is the center back. You can see that both sides are looking alike. If you don't notch it, you may interchange it. So the next thing I'm doing now is to take out the waist sloper. And you see, so this is what our skirt looks like in front. So take note that on this pattern, I didn't add hemming allowance. This is because I'm going to be cutting a lace fabric for it. So I don't need that hemming allowance, so that by the time I fold the skirt, the lace will be longer than the lining. The lace is supposed to be longer, like 2-3 inches longer. So that's why I didn't bother adding hemming allowance. I used the actual length so that by the time we fold, it will actually allow the scallop part of the lace to end the gown. So we have come to the end of the cutting part of this video. In my next video, I'm going to be showing us how to sew our pieces together to achieve this lovely gown. So which is going to be the sewing video. I'll also show us in our next video how to create the basque waistline, how to transfer the basque waistline to the skirt pattern. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something. If you did, please make sure to like this video, share this video with your friends, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.